Another mastermind hit.
Hi. Yeah, I just drove in for Cleveland, so I'm still getting my legs going. And I came upon the Cleveland School of Cannabis. I was a high school science teacher and also a curriculum writer. So I have my master's in curriculum instruction, and I was hired by the school to help write the endocannabinoid system curriculum. So as I came into the school, it was in its infancy in 2017. And I just evolved with the school. I teach the ECS class, I taught patient lab, I taught cannabis research, I dabble a little bit in cannabis cultivation. So I really started to understand this huge amount of information out there that needed to be shared with the general public, as well as people that wanted to get into the industry. Oh, I also taught a little bit of cannabis, the history of cannabis, which I see as a very valuable course that everyone should take, because we really need to understand the history of the plant as a medicine and where we are today and how it's really been ostracized as this evil entity, especially the cannabinoid THC. So we really need to remove that stigma with THC as a medicine, as well as all other cannabinoids, because there really is a medicinal effect. The research out there is supporting that. And we have Sue Sesley from Scottsdale Research Institute, who is really driving the way in the research. She has taken on the federal government for its monopoly in cannabis, growing cannabis. So she won that case and is now growing cannabis that she sells to the DEA. So the research is now going to be like times better than it was in the past, because the level of cannabis that was being grown was very poor and was also old and stored improperly. And so the research, unfortunately, didn't give us the data that was needed. So cannabis research is so important. Why? Because it is going to get it descheduled. Right now, cannabis is a Schedule I drug, which means that it has no medicinal value, or the research is looking to prove that it doesn't have any medicinal value. The research has failed numerous times. So now we need that research to support that cannabis is truly a medicine, and then get it descheduled, which will open up many, many avenues for the cannabis industry, as well as education. What else do I want to talk about? So the Cleveland School of Cannabis is really leading the charge, especially in Ohio. Right now, we have 6 different programs. We have medical, dispensary, processing, horticulture, and what am I missing? Oh, industrial hemp, yes. And then we also have what's called our executive program, which is a little bit of everything. And that is where the majority of our students come into our school. We also started another venue called Cannabis, and this is more of an a la carte. We also have working with different states. We're doing a New York initiative with Representative Senator Sanders. So we're doing free education, working with Senator Sanders in the state of New York. So we're really getting out there and trying to hit every state. We're also working with Al Harrington, who started Viola in California, and he is working with the Cleveland School of Cannabis to start Harrington Institute, which kicks off in November, and it's all powered by the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Our teachers come from many different avenues in the cannabis industry. We have Christina De Jesus from Galena's, but she's at the Cleveland School of Cannabis. She's created our horticulture program and has done an amazing job in leading the industry with some really high quality cannabis flower and products. So shout out to you. It's just been an amazing journey starting in this. My interview at the school was in this little room, and now I'm in that same office where I had my interview. So the school's really expanded. We're looking to really get more hands-on experience. We currently have a lab set up for Sugar Valley Hemp Company, which is more on the east side of Cleveland, where we actually bring students in to, it's a processing facility, so they actually get to make product, they trim flower, and we work with all Ohio hemp farmers. So we're really branching out. We've also been talking tours of different facilities, cultivation and processing. So we're getting our students out into the industry to be experienced. And the most important thing is to have that cannabis knowledge where they can feel confident in talking to somebody who does not believe cannabis as a medicine. So they're really getting out there and being advocates for the amazing plant. And so it's so important that we have people going into industry to talk with doctors and talk with people and give them good information, factual information, and present cannabis in an educational way. The Cleveland School of Cannabis and myself is also involved in Ohio Medical Marijuana Physicians Association, so the school is involved there. We're trying to connect with many different entities. The Ohio, it's called WUMPA, and they give presentations to the medical doctors as well as anyone else who's interested in cannabis. So it's really important that we connect with our CTR physicians as well as dispensaries. So there's a little bit of a disconnect with our physicians and our dispensaries, and we really need to bridge that gap with education. So the more we connect medical card users with doctors and just have a better dialogue, the better our medical cannabis program will be. So I think that's a really big step in getting the industry to where it should be. You know, we're moving at a slower pace than other states, and I know people find that frustrating, but just reading about New York laws, at least we have full flower. In New York, it's ground flower, and that would be really hard. So walking dispensary, walk out with it, not having any flower. So there are really some positive things from our medical program, but there is a lot that we need to fix. Are there any, I can talk about the endocannabinoid system. Any questions up there? Anybody have anything that it could be on any topic? I have Lisa, who's also a director of education at the school that works with Cannabis that can help. Any questions from anybody sitting here? No? Nothing? Okay, yes, we have a question. The ECS, yep. No, the endocannabinoid system, sure. What do you want to know? Okay, sure. All right, so the endocannabinoid system, where do I start? All right, let's start with how they discovered it. So there's a lot of people that came into connection with, so let's just start with Dr. Raphael Michel. So he's the person who identified THC as a psychoactive component that's found in the cannabis plant. So he was just a simple research person that, like, why hasn't anybody figured out what the psychoactive component is? So there's a great video of him, a documentary called The Scientist. So if you have not seen that, it's called The Scientist, and it is a really good documentary about Dr. Raphael Michel's life and just his cannabis research. So he decides to go down to the police department and he picks up cannabis or hashish, and he takes it on the bus and goes back and he gives it to his wife, and has his wife make a cake out of it. And then he serves it to his guests, his friends. And then he starts doing research on how they react in different ways. So he really is starting to, the best thing about Dr. Raphael Michel is that he is a true scientist for him. So he starts asking all these questions. He was able to isolate THC, but prior to that, CBN had been discovered in the late 1940s, as well as CBD by Roger Adams. So he's able to identify the THC molecule from their previous work. So he isolates THC in 1964 and really takes off with that. And he also worked with scientists all around the world. So he wasn't an egomaniac, like, this is what I'm doing. He reached out to the Czech Republic, Dr. Nair, and then he even worked with our government. We have Alan Hollowitz and Dr. William Devane, who were doing research trying to figure out, how cannabis is abused and what other things it's going to lead to. And then they discovered the CB1 and CB2 receptors. So it's all, and then Dr. William Devane went and worked with Dr. Sham, and then they identified our own endocannabinoids. So they identified adenine first, which is our what we call bliss molecule. Devane was a huge studied it. And so he identified that, and they discovered 2,8-G, which is a second endocannabinoid that they found. Remember, the term endo means within. So our body generates these cannabinoids on demand when our body needs it. It works similar to a neurotransmitter like serotonin, acetylcholine, so it works similar to that, except it's called what's called a retrograde. It goes from the post neuron to the presynaptic neuron. So I won't get into all that nitty-gritty. But we have CB1 and CB2 receptors throughout our whole body. So it's all everywhere. One of the most dense places of receptors is in the female reproductive organs. So really interesting fact. A lot of the research that is being done is in Israel and Spain, the United States, not so much. But anyways, back to the ECS. So CB1 receptors are mainly going to be found in our central nervous system, our brain and our spinal cord. So they're going to affect everything our brain does, from our decisions, our thoughts, our memory, our emotions, and they also modulate our neurotransmitters as well. CB2 receptors are going to find more in the peripheral nervous systems and our organs. Okay? And we also have them in our glial cells, which are really important for taking care of our neurons. So our neurons are the ones doing all the messaging, sending all the signals up and down. So all the stimuli here, I hear the sound, I'm hungry, I take that all in, goes up to my brain, it recognizes it, and whatever response. So the ECS is involved in that. The main job of the ECS is homeostasis. So that's keeping our body stable. Okay, so it's keeping, when people say what's healthy, like, are you a healthy person? It all comes down, is our body in balance? Is our body in homeostasis? So the ECS is overseeing all of our other systems, our cardiovascular systems, our immune system, our digestive system, our respiratory system. So the ECS is involved in all of those. So when we think about that the ECS was only discovered in 1990, that they're just learning about it. It's in its infancy. So it's really important that we understand how the ECS works with all our systems. The two main ones that they study are the nervous system, the immune system, and now they're looking into, they're looking into many different systems, I should say. But there's a lot of research out there on how asthma, so if you didn't know, cannabis really helps with asthma patients. And if you think about why, if you're taking stuff into your lungs, it's not going to be bad. Well, what happens when you use cannabis, it's going to open up your bronchial tubes. So you're going to get those air sacs open, you're getting more oxygen in, and you're going to be able to breathe better. Okay? So there's cannabis has been used for centuries to help treat asthma. And you can go on with other different elements that ECS and how cannabis works. All right, any other questions? I can. Yes. So yeah, that's one of the really frustrating, great question, because this is a hot topic in Ohio. That's one of the really frustrating things with cannabis, not putting that on our qualifying conditions in the state of Ohio. All the research is showing in other states where we have medical marijuana is that the opioid prescription has dropped by 25%. That's a huge number. It's a huge number. So if we can get patients to get cannabis to help them maybe not get off the opioids, but to reduce the amount they use, and even more so in California, I believe it was California, that they just are allowing patients to get cannabis in the hospital. In other states, you literally, the doctor will give you cannabis, you go into a room and you use a volcano to get your, to inhale your cannabis. Other states give cannabis away, or countries give cannabis away for free as medicine. So we have a long way to go. But yes, and the other thing that the research shows is that people that are using cannabis and opioids, that they work really well together. So say, for example, I take, my Percocet in the morning, and then I use cannabis throughout the day, and then oftentimes you hear them say, I forgot to take my Percocet or my next one because I'm not in any pain. So all of a sudden they're using less and less opioids, and it's a nice blend. And I'm not here to say whether opioids are good or bad, but cannabis can really help with pain. THC is the #1 pain cannabinoid, and CBD is second to that. So we have 2 major cannabinoids that are going to help with pain, and they hit many of the receptors, especially our trip receptors that are responsible for us feeling pain. Okay, so good question. Any other questions? Yeah. So CBD, it's CBD, not CBG. Okay, so yes, so you have to think of THC and CBD, they're like yin and yang. They like balance each other. So yes, CBD will bring down that high because it's hitting CB2 receptors, and it will bring that down. It doesn't hit it indirectly. But yes, that is true. And just to talk about cannabinoids, so we have cannabigeric acid, and that is the precursor to all the cannabinoids. So CBGA will lead to THCA, and that A is a carbonic acid group that when we heat it, gives us THC, CBD, CBG.
No, it's you just grab the front and it goes round. It isn't gonna be heavy. Oh, no, it's very light.
Yeah, so there is research out there. So if you're not familiar, if you've ever had a list of medicine and they say, don't eat grapefruit with that kind of correlates with CBD.
Okay, so
there's a huge long list of medicines that you should not drink grapefruit juice or eat grapefruit with. So you want to look at that list, especially for CBD, because yes, what happens is our CD450 enzyme gets either increased, so you break down the medicine really fast, so that the medicine doesn't work.
So what are you doing?
Or it decreases that medicine from getting broken down.
Okay.
And then
I hate these blinds.
I know you do.
You don't want to
get to the accumulation of that medicine.
As far as the top,
Especially for blood thinners, you got to be really careful, or anti, blood clots, because those can be like threatening, right? So you got to be really careful. And that's where, once again, when we're talking about the disconnect between physicians and medical cannabis patients. So oftentimes people want to say, ask their doctor, and their doctor is like, oh, don't even use that, and so no one's doing the research, or it's but yes, there is research out there. That's the best I've come up with, is great. Yeah, thank you. Yes, and even our federal government has a patent for cannabis as a neuroprotectant. It's 6,650. But the U.S. government has a federal patent for it, stating that cannabinoids are a neuroprotectant. So yes, so very much. Yes. Yeah. So unfortunately, because cannabis being a Schedule I drug, there is very minimal research on children because it's that moral dilemma. So no, but you're right. We prescribe drugs or medicine to our children all the time. I know my own son was constantly given meds, and it's just, to the point where it was enough. But no, and that's the same thing when we talk about pregnancy and cannabis. It's a whole topic that's really hard to research. So yes. Yes. So there has been a lot of research with CBD in children, especially with multiple swimming. You actually got Charlotte Figge, who came in the story of Charlotte's Web, came about. But yes, the high CBD cannabis plants have definitely been researched for MS, for Parkinson's disease. Yes, so CBD, high CBD plants with low THC, definitely researched and really positive. But it's been a huge battle. If you've ever, that's another great story to follow with Charlotte Figge and her journey, as well as Ryan's story. There's some really amazing children's stories out there, but it's been a battle in places like this, for sure. So yes. Say that again. Autism. Yeah. Another question. Yeah. Yeah, so that's, I know one we're really trying to get on the qualifying conditions in the state of Ohio. So that's a big one. And yes, there is research. We just think about the anxiety an autistic child has. I actually worked with homeschool students on the autism spectrum and go to their houses and work with them. So I could just give them cannabis just to relax them. Like it was a really big thing for an 18-year-old to meet me at the library to work on their schoolwork. So if you could just give them that, just to remove that anxiety, just to walk into, the public library to meet. So yes, there is a lot of research. I mean, that's one of the biggest things for anxiety. We can really get that out because anxiety goes with so many illnesses. It's really hand in hand. I mean, as well as pain, obviously, that is how we got into the medical marijuana. Did you want to add something else? Great. Yes. Anger, yes. So the biggest one that I talk about when I'm teaching, this would be a patient navigation class that I was with Alzheimer's. So if you've ever met anybody with Alzheimer's, they're usually can get easily agitated, even violent or aggressive. So if we could use cannabis for that anger to calm people down, yeah, it would be really important thing, because if you think about a lot of illnesses too, there comes this anger and that you just want to fight somebody because you're dealing with a lot of pain and anguish. So to be able to calm that anger is really important. And I also think of people with PTSD. Sometimes that anger stays with you, and it's not always like the depression that often comes with PTSD. That anger is there as well. That's awesome. Great. Mhm. Yeah, so you bring up a really good point, because Dr. Ethan Russo, who's another renowned researcher, she's been all over. So he is right now currently researching endocannabinoid deficiency. So people that have autoimmune diseases, they haven't been able to figure out why do we have neurodegenerative diseases that they can't pinpoint it. There's just a whole long list. It could be genetics, it could be environment, it could be food you took in. And so what he's researching is maybe some of these ECS isn't working properly. Maybe the receptors aren't activated. Maybe there's not enough endocannabinoids working in the body. Maybe you have too much of FAAH enzyme or MAGL enzyme, and those are what breaks down our endocannabinoids. So if we can understand that, and if ECS isn't working properly, you can use cannabis to help get it going again. And cannabis, we're talking about cannabis, you don't need a
We're also running into issues where even if he would take it tolerance free, it's starting not to do as much as it wants to. It wants, to do. So our question today was, is it adequate for these procedures for
Mm-hmm.
or is it, just all
Yeah. Probably a combination, and then, but also I think I'm just guessing. I don't have a medical background. I was a biology major, but that's as far as it goes. So I would recommend that you talk to a physician about that, a medical marijuana physician. Yeah. Enough research. Gotcha. It could be, are you using the same cultivar every time? Is it so I would start tracking what you're using as well, like what terpenes are in there, and the names, and just kind of look at the lineage and kind of research it more plant specific to the chemovar, and just see, because certain ones might have higher percentages of other cannabinoids that like THCV would, and CBG. So you want to look at all the cannabinoids and see, because certain cannabinoids can really affect the outcome, as well as terpenes. I would look into terpenes as well. But that's all I have. I'm assuming there's another, I don't know if, but if, any more questions, comments? Yes. That would be for somebody that is legal. If you're a master grower here, how can you get into other states and start transporting across state lines? Yes. Right, right. Your experience. Well, I mean, it's hard because every state has different rules and regulations. And then scheduled one, if we can just remove that, I think that would open up the playing field too, because I think people really, since every state is so different, I think once it gets more, I don't want to say federalized, but more universal, yeah. Right, right. Okay, gotcha. Mm-hmm. Doesn't cross over to Ohio. Right. Right. Get it, then I have to get a new one. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, that is one thing we talk about in the cannabis education realm. Like, there's no standards, there's no curriculum standards. Like, so when I was a high school science teacher, we had the Ohio State curriculum. You had to teach A, B, C, all the way down, and that's what you were expected to teach. And you weren't supposed to, just bring in something random. You had to stick with that curriculum. So currently, there is no standard curriculum for cannabis in our country, and even in the state of Ohio, really. So, what's that? That's right. Yeah. So the Cleveland School of Cannabis is trying to make it national cannabis standard. Our president is from the education realm, and he is trying to reach out to all cannabis educators and bring them in to do a collaborative cannabis standard education, which I think is so important, because we need to hear from industry, like, this needs to be mandatory in your education. This needs to be mandatory. So yeah, we're trying to create that standard, and then hopefully it will be across the United States as well. And I think that would be very beneficial, because yeah, everybody has certain certificates because there's so many cannabis educations programs out there, especially online. Okay, I want to hand over the mic because I could talk all day. Okay. I'm saying, say that again. Yes, I'm not super familiar, but I'm going to have to go yes. Yeah, so then they become addicted to that. Yeah. So yeah, so I would say yes, for sure. I think any use of cannabis, whether it doesn't necessarily have to be high THC, but it will help with withdrawals. And basically, when you're going through withdrawal, you just want to feel normal or back in balance. So that's really what cannabis does. It brings you in that balance. It doesn't necessarily have to be THC. I would say, a full spectrum meaning that it has THC, cannabinoids, and terpenes. So the whole plant. So staying closest to the plant would be the best way to go. Yeah. From the medicine. everything. Yeah. Yeah, so that's been the big thing with a lot of our pharmaceutical medicines is they cause so many other side effects, and then you have to take another pill and another pill, and next thing you know, you're on 9 different pills. And so you're just continually with cannabis, you don't have the side effects you get from cannabis: drowsiness, dry mouth, red eyes. And some people, if you have too much THC, get that paranoia. But you can control that with lower THC. So cannabis has very minimal. It's not physically addicting, or if the research says if it is, it's very minimal, like caffeine. So that's where it is. But it is psychologically, it can be very habitual for people. So I just want to recognize that for that cannabis does have dependency issues, not necessarily addiction issues. To be able to have home grow. Yeah, home grow. Yeah, that's one of the things. Yeah, we definitely need to talk about today. Oh, right. Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, we take for granted driving everywhere in our independence. Yes, for sure. Yeah. So thank you so much for listening and engaging with me. I appreciate it. I love to share my knowledge, and shout out to the Cleveland School of Cannabis.